Thieves broke into a dealership and they didn't steal a single car, but instead they were after all of the deal jackets. And what's inside of deal jackets? Photocopies of driver's licenses, personal information, credit apps, banking information. And so it was just such a showstopper for me to think, wow, we're now in an age where the bad guys are not just out to steal the metal, but they're after, they're going to find creative ways to steal critically sensitive personal information that can not only harm the dealerships themselves, but the consumers who are shopping.
What piqued your interest? What brought you to this topic?
Cybersecurity is a topic that has been grabbing so many more headlines in other industries like financial services and healthcare. And so here in the world of automotive, it hasn't been talked about as much, but if you really think about the inner workings of the message inside the article, we should be talking about it more. And as marketers in automotive, because we touch the customer and we're trying to touch the customer, we're trying to influence the customer, keeping the customer safe, keeping the customer's data safe is so paramount to running a good business today. So that was kind of the inspiration, if you will, behind the driver of the creation of this article. When you couple that with the CDK ransomware attack from last summer, which was huge for the industry, it could have been far worse. And thankfully, we haven't really seen too much more activity along those lines, since then. It's just a topic that is just begging to be talked about more from an educational standpoint. So that's kind of a few of the drivers of why I felt it was important to cover this topic.
I also think with all the talk about AI that's happening globally, obviously it's very much here, it's embedded in so much of what we do. It just creates more opportunities for people to hack and to get into systems where they potentially shouldn't be. So I am fully in agreement with you. The next question I have is, was there a particular moment or trend that made you say dealers need to hear about this other than the CDK? You mentioned the CDK hack from last summer. You said now it could have been so much worse. Can you share a little bit more about that?
I'll give you a story that I heard not long ago. Ken Hill, who's the managing director of a company called 700 Credit. I was talking with Ken at the NADA conference in New Orleans this year, and he was telling me a story about how thieves had broken into a dealership. And you think, oh, breaking into a dealership, they're here to steal cars. No. Thieves broke into a dealership and they didn't steal a single car, but instead they were after all of the deal jackets. And what's inside of deal jackets? Photocopies of driver's licenses, personal information, credit apps, banking information. And so it was just such a showstopper for me to think, wow, we're now in an age where the bad guys are not just out to steal the metal, but they're after, they're going to find creative ways to steal critically sensitive personal information that can not only harm the dealerships themselves, but the consumers who are shopping. So that was a really big eye-opener for me of kind of where we are today, separate of the ransomware attacks, which you expect the fraudsters to be out there trying to hack into systems. But what the bad guys are doing today is so much beyond that. And I hope that that story gives, all readers and all viewers a really clear example of just how much we have to be on guard here to protect all of this sensitive information.
That is so crazy. I can only imagine the surprise, right? I mean, you keep the keys locked away, and obviously
Yeah,
there's legislation that is protecting, or at least not protecting, but holding accountable the people or businesses that have to possess this personal information. I think it's called PII in the
PII.
US.
Yeah,
Yeah.
personally identifiable information.
It must have been such a shock. I can only imagine sort of the dealer arriving the next day, his team unlocking and then realizing something's wrong, and then reviewing probably security cameras and seeing thieves walking around with documents. That's really
Right.
bizarre.
Right. Nobody probably plans for that type of a scenario, but that's a great example of the need to protect information as much as we need to protect the physical assets on the lot.
John, speak to me about secured data in transit.
Yeah. So as I was doing research for this article, I know I'm citing a company called BotDoc in here. And so what fascinates me about what BotDoc's doing is that they are cornering the market on protecting the process known as secure data in transit. So when you think about that, when you go in to shop for a car, you do a test drive, you start talking to the salesperson about the car that you're interested in. You know, they need information from me to start to put a deal together. So lots of times, you know, you'll walk on the lot and they'll say, oh, you know, text me a copy of your driver's license or send me a WhatsApp. Just take a snapshot of your driver's license and I can, you know, start to run the records. But that is the absolute worst thing that you can do, because there are so many different ways that the bad guys, the hackers, can intercept the PII, the personally identifiable information. And so what dealers need to be doing today is setting up all the proper systems on the back end so that the way that we hand over our information to the salesperson or the dealer is very protected. It's very trusted, it's very protected, and we know that it's completely secure. So, you know, for many, many years, we would think of the fraudsters and the bad guys as creating synthetic identities and trying to hack into systems to steal certain types of data or information. And while that's still happening and it's still a threat, the way that we interact with our own personal information and the way that we hand it over to whether it's your dealer, whether it's your bank, or whether it's your doctor, right? We're talking about automotive, but there are other industries that have really, over the last several years, perfected the art of handing over personally sensitive information. We now need to get to a point where the auto industry is mimicking the higher standards that some of these other industries like healthcare and banking are doing on their end. And that's what fascinated me and why I cited the information from the company called BotDoc, because they have figured it out and they're having a lot of success in securing that type of information.
What can dealers do now? Because so much information is out there and there is so much content that speaks almost around our industry. We should be thinking about this. Dealers should be doing that. But I think often there's a disconnect between what is happening and what the community is talking about versus what the next steps are. If you're a dealership and if you're a dealer operator and you're watching this, or if you're a GM or a sales manager or an F&I manager, I'm sure, and you're watching this or reading the article that you wrote, what can you start doing right now that can take your dealership in the right direction?
You have to understand that when it comes to something like cyber defense, it is not a question of if, it's a question of when. The bad guys are everywhere. The bad guys are, it feels like, are always going to be one or two steps ahead. So you need to do everything possible to protect these types of sensitive data. A couple of things you can do is realize that if you're still taking somebody's driver's license, putting it on the copy machine, and then putting it into a paper deal jacket, you're already way behind. you need to now be digitizing all of those systems with the right formats and the right processes that are secure. That's the first thing you need to do. The second thing is you need to understand that there are going to be investments that need to be made here. I understand that we're now in this crazy environment of tariff threats, and who knows what that's going to do for operational costs. Everybody's costs of doing business are going up because of what's going on in our world today. But you wouldn't operate your dealership without liability insurance. So you should not operate your dealership without cyber insurance. You have to look at it in much the same way.
Smiling because I had a conversation with Tom Klein recently, and he obviously sings insurance all the time because he very much needs to. And we've had a discussion recently about cyber insurance. So the fact that we are starting to have these conversations in our industry, I think is really important. I think with the FTC as well, it's more than just putting your customers at risk, but your dealership is at risk as well. We speak often with Tom specifically. I speak to him a lot about the types of fines that are being brought towards dealers and how they're being held accountable. And now he's starting to teach me a little bit about American politics. And he's teaching me that, the Attorney General plays quite a large role, and who the Attorney General is also plays quite a large role in terms of how they prosecute and who they go after. And I think, it's going to be an interesting space to watch. I think it's just the beginning. I don't want to sound all dark and ominous, but I think it's just the beginning. CDK was sort of the first flare, in my opinion, because it's almost like a sitting duck. And it's not just our industry, it's any industry that has access to this information.
So risk is a really interesting word here, because data breaches are not new. There have been times when companies like Target have experienced data breaches. Companies like Home Depot have experienced data breaches. And when these large scale breaches take place, word gets out. There's tons of news stories. There's lots of social media chatter. I don't know about you. I don't know about the viewers of this video, but I personally, if a big brand comes out and reports or has a news item about a data breach, I definitely think twice about doing business, or at least doing online business with that brand anytime in the foreseeable future. It takes a lot for a brand to earn back my trust of doing business with them. So if you put yourself in the shoes of a dealer, it's the same thing. If a dealer, all it takes is one. If a dealer or a service provider or a big brand that's associated with automotive, if it's reported that there has been a hack and millions of records have been tapped into or stolen, I am 100% going to think twice before I go and do business with that dealership. So risk is a very interesting word here. They have to ask themselves, how are we putting ourselves at risk if and should something happen? For marketers in the auto dealer space, they also have to understand that they are communicating one-to-one with consumers, and they're going to lose a lot of positive perception, a lot of goodwill, a lot of trust with the consumers. And so it's less about pounding their chest saying, hey, we've done all these things and we're impenetrable. Nobody's impenetrable. But you have to make sure that you've got these systems in place so that you have the confidence to then go out and build marketing programs, promotional channels, social media opportunities, knowing that you're putting yourself in the right light with the best foot forward to know that you're doing everything you can protection side, so that if consumers do come and interact with you, you have the confidence to answer, yes, we have these protections in place. And so marketers are just as much in the spotlight here as the dealers themselves.
How would you advise a dealership go about dealing with a data breach? How would you advise them if they hired you on what to do next?
So this would fall in the realm of crisis PR. And crisis PR is never a win-win situation. All you're really trying to strive to do is to mitigate the disaster that has taken place. I can't, for the life of me, remember one single time when a brand or a company entered into some type of a crisis phase and lied their way to success or denied their way to success. The fastest way to get through a crisis is to let the healing begin. And the fastest way to let the healing begin is to be upfront with your customers, acknowledging that a breach has taken place, and then quickly following that up with the steps you are taking to fortify the information of whatever is possible of fortifying. Customers need to know that you have acknowledged that there's a problem and a mistake was made, and you can't begin to earn their trust back until they feel confident and comfortable of what steps you are taking. So communicating both of those is super, super important.
Agree with you fully. I think it's been a big year for PR as well. I'm not into pop culture on purpose. I try to avoid it. But with the whole Blake Lively, Justin something, his PR company, I think if there's any takeaway that I did take from that was the algorithm is annoying, number one. And number two, it's people will find out. The public will find out. Social media and the internet will do its thing. And like, I know that I've seen like on certain forums, I'm a big Reddit fan, and people are like, you know, the Twitter people will find you. Like at the very least, you will be caught out. You will be held accountable. People will find things about you and about your brand on the internet. And there's ways to do things. And it seems that the general populace just wants acknowledgement. We're sorry we did this wrong. This is what we'll do moving forward. So I agree with you.
You know, one additional thought on that is there is a very curious, for as long as I can remember, relationship between the way that PR professionals handle a crisis versus how lawyers handle a crisis. And you know, there always has to be a striking a balance here, right? Because the lawyers are going to tell you, no comment, don't say anything, because you don't want to incriminate yourself in front of a jury. However, lawyers also need to understand that the court of public opinion is as much a factor today as a jury in a court of law. And so if you are a brand that has done something wrong or something, a tragedy has taken place, I do feel that it's important that the brand takes every possible step in setting the record straight so that everybody knows the facts. But if you're hiding behind a wall and you're not giving yourself the chance to disclose all of the facts, all you're doing is you are allowing the headlines to form the opinions. And that's a really, really dangerous thing.